Good early afternoon. It is Friday, April 17th. I'm JJ Hastings, your friendly TikTok news anchor, and these are 5 stories you need to know to head into your day. Let's go ahead and jump in. Now, in my first segment, a little bit of continued coverage here on the situation in Hormuz, which I have been covering every day. But in a major development, oil prices experiencing a dramatic sell-off this morning following an announcement from Tehran. Now, the Iranian foreign minister declared that the Strait of Hormuz is fully open to all commercial maritime traffic. This move is said to explicitly be tied to the ongoing ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. Following the announcement, a lot of movement in crude barrel pricing, which you don't specifically care about, I'm sure, but a significant shift as U.S. oil prices are now on track to close below the $100 barrel threshold today, with Trump confirming the reopening via social media like everything else, though he noted that a U.S. blockade will remain in full force until this deal with Iran is 100% finalized. Now, as I've explained to you in a couple other videos, the Strait of Hormuz is located between Oman and Iran, and it connects the Persian Gulf with the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. 1/5 of the world's liquid petroleum consumption passes through this little waterway every single day. So historically, this strait has been used as a geopolitical lever during times of tension with both the West or Israel. And the recent hostilities between Israel and Lebanon have stoked fears that a wider regional conflict could end up shutting the strait altogether, which would then potentially send those oil prices to be well above $150 a barrel. For you, what does all of this mean? Well, typically, a plunge in crude prices typically translates to lower costs at the gas pump and then reduced shipping surcharges for the goods we rely on. This is Winston. He won't stop interrupting. So let's move into our second segment for the day. Now, Capitol Hill has narrowly avoided a total lapse in federal surveillance authorities, but only by the thinnest of margins last night. Congress voted this overnight to extend the Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which you may know as FISA, for just 10 days, setting a new expiration date of April 30th. Now, this stopgap measure comes after a chaotic week where GOP leadership failed to pass a 5-year renewal or even the 18-month compromise requested by the White House. Both of these longer-term bills were defeated. The Senate eventually approved the 10-day extension via a voice vote this morning to keep the program operational while those negotiations continue. Now, Section 702 is a powerful tool that allows U.S. intelligence agencies to intercept electronic communications of foreign nationals outside the United States without a specific warrant. However, it has been a lightning rod for controversy for nearly 20 years because the incidental collection often sweeps up the communications of Americans talking to those foreign targets. Privacy advocates from both sides of the aisle have long demanded a warrant requirement before federal agents can search the database for an American's information, a move the intelligence community claims would blind them to immediate threats. This rift highlights, breakdown within the government regarding the balance between national security and the Fourth Amendment. If a permanent deal isn't reached by April 30th, the legal authority for this data collection becomes murky. While the government argues it can continue some collection under existing certifications, tech and telecom companies would likely file immediate lawsuits to stop complying with data requests, effectively freezing a primary source of U.S. counterterrorism intelligence. Now let's move over to India for our third story this morning. A brewing crisis in India's West Bengal is casting a shadow over their upcoming April 23rd elections. Millions of voters, many of them disproportionately from the Muslim community, have found their names purged from the electoral rolls. The removal stems from a special intensive revision being conducted by the Election Commission of India, or the ECI. Now, the scale is staggering. In some constituencies, where Muslims make up 25% of the population, like Nadigram, analysis shows they account for over 95% of those deleted names. Many citizens are finding that minor clerical discrepancies, such as using a nickname on a voter card versus a formal name on a ration card, are now being used to bar them from the ballot box. Now, West Bengal is a critical political battleground in India. It has been governed by the opposition Congress since 2011 and is a state the ruling BJP has long sought to flip. with the BJP arguing the revision is necessary to weed out, quote, illegal infiltrators from neighboring Bangladesh. Critics, however, argue that the SIR is being used as a tool of voter suppression, targeting those unlikely to vote for the Hindu nationalist platform of the central government. This represents a potential crisis of legitimacy for the world's largest democracy. Beyond the religious tensions, legal experts note an excessive burden on female voters and the poor, who often lack the rigid documentation required to prove their residence or identity after marriage. With the Supreme Court refusing to allow those pending tribunal cases to vote this month, millions of Indian citizens may find themselves silenced in what is being described by Al Jazeera as one of the largest disenfranchisement events in recent history. As an American, if this story sounds familiar to you, because it holds many, many echoes of the current fight here domestically against the SAVE Act, which would create many of these similar difficulties for female voters, the disenfranchised, and the poor to be able to vote. All right, now from India, let's move over to Burma, which you might know as Myanmar. In one of his first official acts since assuming the presidency earlier this month, Myanmar's new leader has granted amnesty to over 4,300 prisoners. Among the most notable updates is a reduction in the prison sentence of Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi and a full pardon for former president Win Myint. Now, Suu Kyi, who's 80 years old and has been held since the 2021 military coup, saw her 27-year sentence reduced by 1/6, which is roughly 4.5 years. Additionally, all death sentences across the country have been commuted to life imprisonment. While state media framed this as a move toward returning the path of democracy, the international community remains skeptical this morning, as Myanmar has been in a state of civil war and political upheaval since the military seized power in February of 2021. Since then, the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners reports that over 30,000 people have been detained on political charges. Mass amnesties are common in Myanmar during the new year in April, but human rights groups point out that usually fewer than 14% of those released are actual political prisoners. Most are often low-level offenders. Now, while the reduction of Suu Kyi's sentence is a notable shift, her whereabouts remain unknown according to multiple sources, and health reportedly declining. UN officials and human rights groups argue that these pardons are a PR tactic by the junta to gain international legitimacy rather than a genuine move toward reform. Now, a junta is a form of essential coup government where the military takes over control of the government. Now, for the families waiting outside Insan prison, the news is bittersweet, as thousands of political activists remain behind bars despite the democratic rhetoric of the new administration. And in my final segment today, let's bring it back to the domestic field and talk about this ICE exodus. So you might have heard this morning the acting head of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, Todd Lyons, will step down at the end of May. Lyons, a career official who rose through the ranks from an agent in Dallas to the top of the agency, is reportedly moving to the private sector, according to Reuters and many other sources. His departure comes at a period of unprecedented volatility for the agency. The Department of Homeland Security been effectively shut down for over 2 months due to a congressional funding deadlock. Meanwhile, ICE is facing intense and deserved scrutiny following the fatal January shooting of 2 U.S. citizens in Minnesota, as well as a U.S. citizen in Chicago and a 4th U.S. citizen outside of Chicago by agency personnel. Now, ICE has been the tip of the spear for this current administration's domestic security crackdown. However, the agency's tactics, as you know, have led to significant legal and political pushback. Just this week, a Minnesota prosecutor filed assault charges against an ICE agent for an incident in Minneapolis, the first such criminal charges against an agent in relation to the recent enforcement surge. Now, Lyons' departure follows the firing of former DHS Secretary Kristi Noem in March, making a total turnover in immigration leadership in just 60 days. Now, this vacancy at the top of ICE, combined with the planned nomination of Cameron Hamilton to lead FEMA, suggest a major restructuring of the DHS is underway. For you, a member of the public, that leadership vacuum means the lack of congressional funding and immigration enforcement is currently operating in a legal and financial gray zone. With mounting lawsuits over due process and free speech violations, the next director will inherit an agency politically polarized and under heavy fire. I'm JJ Hastings. I'll see you in the next one.